What is the way forward? How do we make sure that this does not happen again? Well, for this portion of the discussion, I'm joined by Dr. Mamphela Ramphele. She is the former Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. Doc, thank you very much for your time, and thanks indeed for making the time to talk to us on this important day and discussion. If the ANC government is to atone for what happened in Marikana, what should have been done 10 years on, and why has that not happened?
Thank you very much, Crowley, and thank you to your listeners. This is a matter that goes beyond the ANC. It's a matter of our social and political culture post-1994. The idea that no one is held responsible when police open fire on people or hang them or make them slip on pieces of soap or make them starve themselves to death, nothing or nobody is held responsible. That's the legacy that we come from in the apartheid era. Post-1994, there was no active program to reorient policing to a more human rights, accountability, respect for human dignity as an institutional culture of the South African police. Instead, we vacillated between militarizing and demilitarizing the police. And so that's the reason that no one has thus far been held responsible in terms of the politicians who made the decisions, the private sector people who were responsible for calling in the police. And so the wound festers.
Sure.
And so for us to find a way forward, we've got to acknowledge what went wrong and why.
Yeah.
And I believe this is as good a moment as any, 10 years after the fact, to really look into ourselves and be honest with ourselves, starting with our president, who was a member of the board of Lonmin, who was said to have had conversations with the police. What was the nature of those conversations? And on reflection now, what does he think he did wrong and therefore needs to learn? The idea of admitting mistakes is to learn from them. What did he learn?
Dr. Mamphela, let me do this. Let me ask us to do this because I can see there's lots that you want to say, and we have very little time. So almost in bullet point form, I'm going to ask you on the role of the police. Has anything changed since the findings of the Farlam Commission of Inquiry on their actions?
Nothing has changed because no admission has been made, and therefore no lessons have been learned, and no one in government is holding them accountable.
On the part of the company, we know that it has since been taken over by Sibanye Stillwater, used to be Lonmin, and now Sibanye. Sibanye said when they were taking over in 2019 that they are aware that they are taking over in part the legacy of Marikana, and therefore transformation was going to be at the heart of what they are going to do. Are you seeing any tangible evidence of that since that takeover?
Yes, I have, and I have the great fortune of being a co-founder of Reimagine SA that is advising Sibanye Stillwater in their journey of healing, renewal, and reimagining mining. I'm not saying that they've ticked all the boxes, but the first thing is to make the commitment. And I believe that Sibanye Stillwater has made the commitment. It is working with a whole team of advisors to address the various aspects of that very tragic.
Well, I've got to counter what you are saying, Dr. Mamphele. And I'm saying this because I just had a conversation with David Bruce from the Benchmarks Foundation, who says he has been on the ground in Marikana. If anything, the situation is worse. 12-year-olds are pregnant. People are doing just about anything to make ends meet. I think I'm paraphrasing him correctly when I say those words, because that is the sum total of what he said. So if there is tangible change, why do other people hold a completely different view?
Well, you asked me about the Marikana events. The question of what happens in the socio-economic space in Northwest, which is where Marikana is, what you are describing happens everywhere else, where there hasn't been a massacre. 10-year-olds are getting pregnant here in Cape Town. And so we must be careful about what we ascribe to the Marikana events and what is the same failure of reimagination which characterizes the government of the ANC from 1994. You will find that problem of pregnant girls because our school system is failing children and we don't have accountability when it comes to gender-based violence and male toxic masculinity, which forces women to do things which are antithetical to the respect of their bodies.
Doctor, I've got to quickly wrap this up. I'm going to come to the president's part in a moment because I suspect you're going to say he carries a special responsibility on this issue. But let's quickly touch on what one suggestion has been made in a newspaper article today by someone called John Capel, who says that if the company, Sibanye-Stillwater, which now runs that mine, is to atone for what happened, perhaps one of the things it's got to do is to say to government, hold the police officers who were either on the ground, I suspect is talking either the boots, physical boots on the ground, or even police management that were commandeering those that were on the ground. Hold them accountable so that they are put through the criminal justice system. It's a shock that no one is in jail for what has happened. Do you think that Neil Froneman is gutsy enough to do that?
What I would like to see Neil Froneman doing, which he has the capacity, the authority to do, is to completely transform mining as it is done in South Africa and in Sibanye-Stillwater, where we can't have Neil Froneman earning 300 million a year when ordinary people are earning 12,500 for which those people die. That is in his domain. Yeah. The issue of police being charged is not a Neil Froneman alone issue. It is an issue of you and I. We only talk through that issue during this month. For the rest of the year, we as citizens of South Africa are not doing enough to demand accountability from our government for not only Marikana, many, many areas. And so I think, again, let's be fair and also let's be strategic.
All right.
Because there are areas where we, the people, can do much more than we are doing.
Doctor, I'm completely out of time. I have to put the question about the president. Does he carry a special responsibility, particularly given that he said at the funeral of Winnie Madikizela Mandela that I am going to go and talk to the widows, which has not happened?
He does carry the most important responsibility. When you are the leader, forget about the fact that he was on a member of the board of Lombe. Just today, as the president of South Africa, he has the responsibility to lead by example, by standing up and acknowledging his role and apologizing, because that apology does so much to those who are in pain. And it takes leadership When I was a Vice-Chancellor at UCT, we invited someone for an honorary degree. That person was a person of color who had been refused to do specialization at UCT.
Yeah.
He broke down and cried. I wasn't allowed to do my medical degree at UCT, but I was the Vice-Chancellor. I stood up and apologized for the hurt, the humiliation of that man as now the then leader of the organization. Ramaphosa has no choice. If he accepts the responsibilities of leadership, he must stand up on the 16th of August 2022 and say, I acknowledge my role in this. I acknowledge the role of bad policing as the president of this country, and I commit.
Dr. Ramphele.
Yes.
Dr. Mamphela Ramphele, let me apologize for cutting you off. I'm completely out of time. Thank you so much for your contribution here.